Hi, I would like to talk about education versus enlightenment. But for those who don't understand what enlightenment is, I think I have to start by explaining just that. Actually, enlightenment is the act of reaching the God consciousness. In other words, within us are multiple layers of consciousness, and we have an assignment within a lifetime to evolve within these layers. In other words, we are born as children who are innocent or ignorant of anything of this world. And at that time, when we're infants, our pineal glands are very fully functional. Actually, the pineal gland is the gland on top of your head. When you look into a baby or an infant, you'll actually see that their pineal gland is vibrating. In other words, it's moving. This pineal gland is a major gland in the human body, and it governs the rest of the body, as well as our sleep, as well as waking up patterns or routines. And so this this pineal gland, being the center of consciousness or intelligence, governs every behavior as well as thoughts as well and attitudes. So it is the epitome of human intelligence. It is when we open this pineal gland that we reach enlightenment. And so if you have observed children when they play or when they are still too young, they hardly have any fears, any doubts, any regrets, etc. In other words, their main dominant attributes are curiosity as well as love and joy. This is what the pineal gland does, because it's connected to the rest of the body, and these include endocrine glands, which influence our moods, etc. So this pineal gland, being the seat of consciousness, allows us to penetrate reality and be exposed to dimensions which are far more complex than the world in which we live in. To say the least, the world in which we live in is three-dimensional because it has heights, length, as well as width. And when we go to sleep, we're actually moving from 3D to a four-dimensional world. And whenever we wake up and watch TV and we're on our screens, we're on a two-dimensional world. And so these dimensions differ due to consciousness. In a 3D world, you get more information than you would do in a two-dimensional world, because everything that's on screen and on paper is copied and recorded because it was collected from a three-dimensional world. In other words, it is stored in order to educate future generations, or it is stored in 2D only as a means of helping to ascend consciousness within the 2D sphere or spectrum. And so above 2 dimension, we have 3 dimension. Above that is 4 dimension, etc. Now, suppose we were to live in as many as 8 different realities simultaneously. More like as I'm sitting right here making this video, I'll also be having this conversation with as many other people in another dimension. In another one, I'll be talking to kids, etc. In other words, there will be as many as 18,000 varieties of the same situation or moment. So in order for this to happen, my mind has to increase in capacity and speed so that I can process the informations available in all these worlds and thus respond as appropriately as I'm doing right now. So this is what enlightenment deals with. Enlightenment understands the construction of realities, that every world is an act of imagination, and every imagination belongs to a thinker. In other words, every world has its own God. To help you understand this, would be to start by saying that God, who is an individual, must expand into as many beings as possible. That way he can be infinite, in other words, eternal, because eternal refers to space as well as numbers. For something to be eternal, it has to be everywhere as well as everything. And so enlightenment is the ability, as I was saying, to reach the God consciousness. And once we reach that God consciousness, we have the ability to be everywhere as well as everything. In other words, there is no limit on your intelligence. To say the least, would say that our minds currently run at 24 frames of thought per second. And this is due to the fact that we have physical bodies which must pay full attention to, because they can hunger, they can feel pain, and are subject to as many elements as possible. And so in order for us to be kept in this virtual reality, which we assume to be a life or a reality, there must be a false sensation, which we all know is pain. And this pain is designed to force us to take full credit of this reality. In other words, to pay full attention of everything that's happening in it. And like I said, because we have physical bodies which need our full attention and care of, our minds are locked only in this three-dimensional universe, so much that we are not aware of the fact that whenever we go to dreams, we don't bring our bodies along, and yet we encounter them there, and they remain functional. In other words, the physical body that we have, which we feel pain, is due to us vibrating our minds at its lowest frequency. Suppose we were to be enlightened and give birth to as many generations of kids who will be enlightened and thus be allowed or promoted or encouraged to play with their imaginations as early as possible. And that the only thing we'll do to these kids is to allow them to be the best that they can be. What this will do is to allow consciousness to forever expand until now we will no longer be living in a single dimensional reality, because we'll develop from 2 DNA strands to about 12 active DNA strands, and therefore move from just about 24 frames of thought per second to about 186,000 frames of thought per second, which is roughly the speed of light, and the speed at which consciousness can be considered to be performing at its peak. And so the main difference between education and enlightenment is that enlightenment deals with the reality as to why and how they are constructed, as well as their laws and how to manipulate those laws in order to escape a particular dimension. Suppose we're here on this earth and we're working every day and we send our kids to school because we would like to buy food, have some shelter, clothes, etc. But with enlightenment, what we will do is simply transform our minds in order to transform our bodies so that we no longer feel any pain, any hunger, and not be subjected to elements and matter as we are doing. So, example I'm trying to make here is to say that the two seem to be searching for the same coin, but one seems to have found it, but is being ignored. In other words, with education, we're seeking to make ends meet. And we are doing that within a virtual reality, which means that all of our problems will not be solved because we will be living within this three-dimensional reality, which gives us physical bodies. And for as long as we have physical bodies, we'll continue having these problems which we are having as human beings. In other words, none of our economic breakthroughs or political policies will ever make any difference as far as our bodies are concerned. The only thing that can transform our human nature is our consciousness. And the only study or knowledge system that can help us achieve such levels of pure bliss and multiple realities. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that it's possible to create what could be subscribed to or described to as a paradise on earth while also living in as many realities as possible. That the notion of heaven is born on the fact that there are many worlds in which we can perceive with our minds, given that we can go to the depths of our beings and open this pineal gland, which I explained earlier on. And that is the core or the goal in enlightenment. It is for us to transform from this lowly vibrational reality using our knowledge as well as minds and character to reach the God status so that we can be God and inherit all that God is. Whereas education deals with us being humans on this three-dimensional world, working to make ends meet on a daily basis, thus shaping every generation to repeat what we did until one generation will be able to escape the matrix and will be destroyed. Because matter, like I explained, is an illusion. And every illusion is a test. And whenever you are tested, it's because you will be rewarded or punished. And so a success in every test results in rewards and a failure results in punishment. And we already live in a physical world and we are familiar with pain. And we can also see this as a sign or as a promise of things to come, should we succeed or fail. And that was it from me, Mthunzi Masoga. Hope you enjoy my studies and information. And you can invite as many people to subscribe to my website as well as YouTube channel for more discussions. And you can also send me questions regarding some studies you would like me to touch on, and I'll be so pleased to do that. I'll even mention your name as I'm doing it. And you can also check me out on social media as Eliakim Akosam as well as Alumaduna. Talk to you again. Peace.